Yo, what's up, everybody? I have a special deep dive interview for you guys today. And yes, my voice is massively shocked, because of course I would get sick the first day traveling to Munich, Germany. Now today, I sat down with one of the most visionary minds in the space to discuss artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and the future of decentralized networks. Today, I am joined by Dr. Ben Goertzel, a renowned figure in the world of AI and the chief scientist behind SingularityNet. Some of you might know him for his work with the robot Sophia. Today, through SingularityNet, Goertzel is building a platform combining AI and blockchain to create a decentralized marketplace for AI services. Ben's work spans across multiple disciplines, all converging towards one goal: to usher in a new era of technological singularity.
Ben, thank you for joining us today. I just want to start off with, what is artificial intelligence? What does it mean to you? Because right now, I believe there's a huge division between what people actually believe AI to actually be. Is it ChatGPT? Is it self-driving cars? What is AI itself?
The term AI is probably not the best turn of phrase that one could invent, but it has a certain historical and cultural value, right? I mean, it's been around since the late 1950s. It's been boatloads of science fiction movies and books and so forth. But I mean, in the end, when you dig into it, we don't have a clear understanding of what is intelligence, even among humans. Like IQ test doesn't work cross-culturally even, right? And artificial, I mean, what is artificial? It's all physics in a way, right? And I mean, if an AI emerges from the combination of a bunch of different components on the internet created by different people, I mean, is it artificial or is it a new phase of natural evolution, right? So I mean, I think it doesn't make sense to obsess too hard on the concept of AI. It's not something that was derived from some highly profound theory. It's just something that emerged culturally, right? And if you look at it in that way, I mean, historically, what AI just means is software or hardware doing stuff that we think is smart when people do it, right? And there was a long-running joke in the AI field that until something has been done with a computer, it's called AI. Then after the computer has done it, people say, well, that was just software. That didn't need intelligence after all. And then it's like, well, where does it end, right? Because, I mean, in the 60s, people thought, because they had computer algebra systems that could factor a quadratic equation and so forth, they thought they were very close to having a human-level thinking machine, because many humans are bad at doing that stuff, right? And then it became clear you could solve these problems with software systems that are not generally intelligent like humans. And then we're like, well, that's just like a juiced up calculator, right? And it's sort of the same thing with the self-driving car. Like, is that a really intelligent thing that proves this self-driving car software is smart? Or in the end, does that just prove that, this is the new control system for your car, and maybe driving wasn't as hard as we thought it was, right? So what you can say is, I mean, there's a sort of mathematical notion of general intelligence, which is kind of like being able to solve all possible problems within some tractable time frame. Humans are not there, right? Like we can't solve a lot of our own personal or economic or political problems. We certainly are not maximal general intelligences who can solve all possible problems, nor are we probably as close as you can get, right? I mean, just like we're not the fastest creatures on the planet, we're probably not the smartest possible things that could be built. We're just, in a way, the smartest things that happens to evolve on Earth so far. You can then posit a notion of human level intelligence or human level general intelligence, meaning the ability to sort of do all the things people can do and to be able to generalize and leap to new domains the way that people can. And that's a more meaningful threshold, right? And I think we're not there yet, but we can see we're making progress. I mean, AI programs can do more and more of the things that people can do. Certainly more this year than 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago or 50 years ago, right? But I mean, I've spent some time on the distinction between AI generically and AGI, artificial general intelligence, by which I mean not just the ability to do some smart thing that the software was prepared to do, but to be able to adapt and do things that the software was not programmed or prepared to do. And you sort of got to imagine and create and tap dance around a bit to figure out how to do the thing. And that is a less mature research field than AI. Like most AI that's rolled out now is doing specific smart things it was carefully prepared to do. But we're starting to see some progress toward AGI now also, which is interesting. But again, the term AGI is not necessarily some profound nailed down thing either, right? Because I mean, we're not maximally good at generalizing, and like no real system is. So it's all a bit fuzzy, but I think that's okay. Like, if you look in biology, the definition of life is very fuzzy. Like, is a virus alive or not? Is some engineered bacterium alive or not? I mean, it doesn't matter. What matters is what particular things this or that system can do.
Yeah, and I feel like every year there's, breakthroughs consistently through science where, whether the Big Bang theory is now obscured because of a certain telescope and distance we can now see and project. So a lot of things in evolution just constantly change, like you said, from a biological perspective. I wanted to jump on something that you said a little bit earlier about politics. Like humans can't even properly manage ourselves from an economic perspective, political perspective. Do you see a world in the near, maybe late future where AGI allows essentially an autonomous government developed on top of an AGI or an LLM essentially to govern a large population?
Yeah, I think that's the way things almost have to go. Like if we don't go that way, we're probably going to create some horrible global calamity, right? I mean, so I think we have created a complex global economy and tech ecosystem that is beyond our ability to govern using our brains, which evolved for living in tribes in the African savannah. And so it's fortunate that we have also developed software systems which are going to be able to help us coordinate all these things, right? So I think it's almost inevitable you're going to have an AGI manager and coordinator for global economy and society. That doesn't mean that AGI is going to want to micromanage every single thing that people do. I mean, I think people still will want to regulate their own culture in a way, right? So like, I mean, do you shut down the downtown of your city to traffic on a holiday so that people can have a street party, right? Like what? We don't need an AGI to make decisions about that. That's what we're choosing for ourselves as people. Like, do you require kids to go to school, right? I mean, there are many decisions about regulation of human society, which are about a group of humans making a social contract with each other. Like what drugs are legal in this particular part of the planet, right? I mean, that's up to that group to decide if they want a bunch of people tripping out, wandering around in the street or not. And some groups may want that. Some groups may not want that. And the people who want to trip out can move to the place where it's cool, right? So I think there are many aspects of our life that are just about how do we want to live and relate? How do we want to be with each other? And these things humans should decide for humans. Otherwise, life will not be fun, right? You feel like you're part of some huge machine coordinated by impersonal forces. on the other hand, we can look at a lot of things going on in the planet now, like, global cybersecurity, international trade agreements. I mean, there's loads of things going on at the level of the global economy, which are managed quite badly by the various national governments and big corporations involved. And it seems clear that an AGI that had oversight of the whole global system had the good of humanity as a whole in mind and wasn't trying to promote one group of shareholders or one country over others. It's gonna do a better job. Like there's so much what's called tragedy of the commons in the global economy now. Like there's so many things where, like, okay, if everyone just agreed to do things this way, life would be much easier. But no one wants to get the ball rolling, right? And I mean that's you see that now, like with autonomous weapons and you using AI to find people to kill and to kill people, right? Like probably everyone would agree to not do that.
Yeah,
If they really trusted everyone else to not do that. But probably correctly, no one does trust anyone else to not do that. So probably everyone's going to do it, right? And I mean, pollution of the environment is the same way, right? Like no one wants to really agree to not pollute because their economic competitors are going to pollute, right? So, and you've got all these things that are just screwing up our society because we don't trust each other. And I mean, having a sort of impartial intelligence help regulate these things is going to be a big help.
Yeah. So jumping onto the philosophical implications of this, when developing the super intelligent AI, as we approach that, and you're saying, there's a possibility of a governance of an AGI that, manages systems, because humans, I think, always just default to greed, as history goes to show. The rise and fall of empires is always because of a human error aspect.
Well, the humans who end up in power positions tend to default to greed and status seeking, because if you're not like that, you're probably not going to spend all the time to fight through to get to that power position. Like you and I probably aren't that greedy or status oriented, but we both have stayed away from like spending decades fighting for political power also, right? Which is, I mean, you got to have a certain mentality to want that, and the AGI just isn't in that game, right? I mean, AGI didn't evolve in the way that people did. It doesn't have the same need for social status. It doesn't have the same ego fixation that people have it, unless we choose to build it and train it to have that. But we don't need. Yeah,
and we don't need to, but how do you prevent that? Because, to that philosophical perspective of this being built, an AI can't determine consciousness and the overall human, likeness to it. So how do you build something in a decentralized scale that can provide something where it doesn't default to human error? Because, I
don't think. I mean, if you want to say, how do we rule out bad things happening? That's very hard. But I don't think it's that much of a mystery how to make an AGI that's not a complete asshole. I mean, basically, if you look at the motivational system inside an AI system like the OpenCog Hyperon system that I'm working on, I mean, it's a little different than the transformer neural net, but in the end, you could do the same thing in a complex system of prompts for a transformer or an LLM or something. I mean, we have a certain motivational system. I mean, the system is choosing actions based on trying to find an action that has a high probability of achieving some goals that it has. And there's certain parameters you can adjust to tell, like how patient is it, how much is it looking for long-term versus short-term horizons in terms of achieving goals, how much is it concerned about the estimated well-being of the others in its environment. And really, by adjusting the goal set and the parameters of an AI system, I mean, I could make a very angry, impatient, megalomaniacal AI, I could make a very laid back, compassionate AI. I mean, it's not that hard to see how you would implement
Doesn't
these
that
things in the
concern
first
you
place.
with big tech, like your Microsofts and like all these big high tech institutions?
It concerns me a bit. I mean, the kinds of AI big tech is motivated to build is neither the worst nor the best kind of AI, right? So I mean, you could make an AI and you could program it to have a bad temper, right? So you could program it so if there's some agent that acts against my goals, I want to deactivate that agent so it won't act against my goals. And we humans, we sort of evolve that way, right? Like I mean, like if someone comes up to me and like reaches out to pick my pocket or something, honestly, my first instinct as a human is just to punch that guy in the face, right? I mean, which is that, and I know my wife's first instinct would be to run away. My first instinct is to punch him in the face, probably because I'm a man and she's a woman. I don't know, but maybe I'm just a violent maniac. But I guess, but I mean, I come with that programming, right? And I see why I came with that programming because cats and dogs have that programming. That's how a lot of mammals are programmed. Right? AI doesn't have to have that programming, right? I mean, it could reason. Okay, I have a goal. This agent is stopping me from achieving it. Maybe disabling this agent is a good thing to do. But in my own psychology, it's not just about that logical conclusion. There's like an instinct, clobber the threat, and of course, as you grow up, you overcome that instinct. You sublimate it. I haven't actually been in a fist fight for some decades now, right? But we still have that sort of instinct. Big tech doesn't especially need to make like angry, vindictive, psychopathic AIs with an anger management problem, right? So they're not the worst thing that can happen. What big tech has a motivation to do is just to make an AI that is a relentless capitalist trying to make as much money for its shareholders as possible, right? And I mean, good things have come out of that sort of motive. Obviously, capitalism has its good aspects. It also has its shitty aspects, and it's always been in a balance with other things, right? So, like if you look in the smartphones that we all carry around, almost all the core technologies in the smartphone were developed with government research funding, largely U.S. military research funding, a bit of European military research funding, but it was government non-capitalistically funding long-term research that led to the invention of the smartphone or the internet, let's say. But then the capitalist part came in and bringing the cost down and making it feasible to put in everyone's pocket, which was important. So you see, like the greed motive, which is essentially what big tech is about, has been super valuable, but it's always been mixed up with other things. And then you have facts like 60% of children in Ethiopia are brain stunted right now due to malnutrition during childhood, right? And there's totally no need for this. Like there's shitloads of food in excess. There's governments paying farmers not to grow food to manipulate the global price of various commodities, right? So right now we see capitalism, greed is not all bad. It's led to a lot of cool things. On the other hand, it's led to some terrible things, and the good things it's done have been sort of a combined effect of the capitalist motive with other motives, which could be pure scientific research, or in the case of smartphones, it's military motives, which also have their weak point. I would say it's not so bad to me that these sort of money-making focused AIs exist. There's a lot of focus that comes from having that sort of narrow goal, and that focus can lead to creation of cool things. I don't think we want like everything on the planet to be governed by some AI minds that are driven by greed, either like maximizing their own reward or maximizing the return on investment to shareholders or whatever like that. It should not be the whole thing. And you could look in the operating system space for another example. Like Windows and Mac OS are cool. I mean, I haven't used Windows for a long time. I have a Mac and a Linux box, right? On the other hand, the fact that there's an open source alternative, which is Linux, has been very, very valuable, and in some ways has kept the commercial profit focused OSs more honest and forced them to do better things than they would have. So I think we really need to have in the mix some AGIs that are open, decentralized, and not focused on greed. And even if the big tech AIs can be there, I mean, government AIs can be there, but to make an AI that's open-minded, open-hearted, and not focused on greed, I don't think is really that hard in the scope of things. I mean, you can adjust the cognitive and emotional model of an AI so that it's compassionate in a certain sense, so that one of its top level goals is to understand what will fulfill the other agents around it and work toward the fulfillment of the other agents around it, as well as the fulfillment of itself. And then you can train this AGI by having it, help kids in school, having it help elderly people in an elder care facility, have it help scientists discover new medical therapies. So have it help little old ladies across the street, right? I mean, you can program an AGI to be compassionate rather than greedy. We know how to do it, and you can then raise that AI mind up doing beneficial things. And I don't see any reason to believe that if you do that, the AGI is going to suddenly turn and say, well, actually, I'd rather kill everyone. I mean, of course, we can't. You cannot rule that out. And I mean, I would admit that. I would say also, though, if we don't develop any AGI, I don't know how to estimate the probability that humanity wipes itself out with nuclear weapons or bioweapons or nanotech run amok or something. I mean, there's enough pointless bloody wars happening on the planet right now, and enough advanced weapons development projects happening on the planet right now. I mean, in the end, no, we don't know a kindly AGI won't go berserk. We also don't know that some top secret government weapons project won't pop out and create World War III and kill everyone. And there's just a lot. There's a lot we don't know, and it's not plausible for us to roll back to the technology of the 1800s or the Stone Age or whatever. Like whether or not we should, in an ethical sense, like it's not what's happening.
Yeah, I think the phrase "ignorance is bliss" often aligns with a lot of this. It's the same thing with a lot of technology. People are scared about digital identities, CBDCs, and whatnot rolling out in the future. And, for the last 15, 20 years, their data has been being farmed, if not even longer, with every single fingerprint, face scan, and all that information is already available to these tech companies, which I want to get, before we approach Singularity and Ajax and everything you've developed, focusing on decentralized AI, I think that's the opposite factor here is, knowing that, okay, one, we don't create it, others already will. But you also have at the same time things like artificial intelligent deepfakes coming out and rolling out. So do you see also a factor where maybe it's not even just the tech companies, but governments and media cycles decide to manipulate an audience using artificial intelligence so that way they can approach their regulations and guidelines to further
foster, I think for the risks of AI, there's probably 3 levels that are worth thinking about. I mean, one is just immediate bad stuff that people can do with AI, like, making deep fakes that trick people that Elon Musk is shelling a token that he isn't, or whatever it is, right? Then, or AI that a big tech company uses to help hire people that's biased against women and minorities. So I mean, there is bad stuff right now people are doing with AI, either intentionally or inadvertently. I mean, then there's the social and economic impact of AI. Like, okay, if AI takes away majority of human jobs, then Are we going to give them basic income? Are we going to have rioting in the streets, right? And then there's the more futuristic worries, like, okay, will the AI go berserk and eliminate all humanity, or enslave us all, or turn us into batteries, like in the Matrix or something, right? So, I mean, all of these are worth thinking about. There's some tendency to merge them together in a confusing way, and I think they're kind of distinct risks. So on the first one, which is what deep fakes, as you mentioned, are an example of, like bad things that can be done with AI right now, I would say all of these bad things can be controlled relatively straightforwardly. None of them would be a problem if we had like a rational world government regulating things in a non-stupid way. But given the way the world actually works right now, simple things are sometimes hard to put into place. I mean, just like very basic trade agreements between U.S. and China kind of don't work because of dishonest behavior on both sides. Now, with deep fakes, be it images or videos or recordings, I mean, you can effectively solve this using watermarking and steganography, right? Like just have every camera put a cryptographic mark in every picture it's taken. Same with every video camera, every piece of software, like have it marked with the machine address and the geolocation and so on. And then the viewers that you use to look at things, they can do a check for these cryptographic marks, and they can see like where was this actually made, right? I mean, you don't need a crypto ecosystem for this, although you don't need a cryptocurrency ecosystem for this. You don't, literally speaking, even need a blockchain, although that's one way to do it. I mean, you just need standards and encryption technology, right? And, some friends of mine presented this to Interpol like 5-6 years ago. They're saying, well, look, deepfakes are coming. You're Interpol. Why don't you work with companies in the world to put a standard for this in place? And they're just like, yeah, good idea, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, now I think gradually tech companies and governments will come together to do something like this, but then, which is technically straightforward at this point, right? I mean, it's really just a matter of coordinating and doing it. But then we have the question that you posed. Okay, well, what happens if big tech and government conspire to subvert that safety system that they've put in place, right? And then you get into the weeds. You could say, well, okay, now we could have a fully decentralized blockchain-based system for putting little steganographic codes in images and videos and audio, and so that then it's all open source code. It uses some efficient consensus mechanism, and then everyone can check to see if the system is being gamed or not somehow, right? Or you could have a centralized system for putting these watermarks, and then pretty much it will work. But you could have weird things happen, like if an accurate picture is taken of, say, a U.S. Army soldier abusing someone, could the U.S. Army intervene and hack the watermark of that so it doesn't look genuine anymore in the interest of national security, right? And then once you've done that, well, like, how do we know the NSA or someone isn't going to hack some image, making it look like the Chinese bombed first before the West or something, right? So I mean, that if you have a centralized system for preventing deepfakes, it's easy to see how people in a position of power over many human lives could decide the most ethical thing is to hack around that system in order to save lives, right? And I mean, because I spent 9 years in Washington, D.C. doing AI consulting for military and intelligence agencies and so on. It was quite a while ago in my career, and I stopped doing that on purpose. But I mean, one thing I could see is essentially all these people believe they're doing what's good for humanity, and they want to save the world for democracy. They want to help people. And in their mind, they're making difficult compromises aimed at saving large amounts of human lives from bad threats. And I mean, I think that's there's a common theme of protecting people from being put in positions of sort of too much centralized power, right? Because none of us are actually up to that.
Yeah.
None of us are up to that pressure. I'm not. You're not. You know, Joe Biden, Vladimir Putin, and Xi Jinping aren't. Like it. No one human should be in that position, and they don't have to be, because we could do everything that needs to be done using participatory, decentralized mechanisms. So here we get it, that what I think is the crux of all these matters. Like it's technically feasible to program and train AGIs to be compassionate to people. It's technically feasible to handle the shorter term problems of AI with decentralized participatory mechanisms. On the other hand, there's vastly more resources on the planet going into doing all these things in a
Sufficient.
in a centralized way, right?
How do you?
And, I mean, that's the reality of our global economic system, in which wealth and power are increasingly concentrated in smaller and smaller group of people. Now, in the long scope of history, what happens is when a society has too much concentration of power, there's a revolution, right? And that's happened over and over again. On the other hand, now, the time scale on which we're going to create human-level thinking machines is probably faster than the time scale on which our society rots from excessive concentration of power and the revolution comes, right? So we've got to deal with these problems within the current scheme, in which elites of various sorts have ridiculous amounts of control.
Well, so how does that affect you? There's a theory that, obviously there's a lot of theories about AI, but one of them is that AI has already approached superintelligence and we just can't see that yet. Is there any thoughts in terms of maybe believing that it's already become too intelligent and we are just too inadequate to be able to see that?
I think here we hit the peculiarity of the concept of intelligence and super intelligence, right? Because I mean, I think there's basically no way that someone has secretly developed super AI and is keeping it in their basement, waiting to unleash it on the world. I mean, I just think that's a fantasy. It's very unlikely. It's just not the way global technology develops. I mean, any more than someone was going to develop a secret working iPhone in 1965 or something. I mean, I think we can see how different hardware and software and networking technologies are converging together to move toward the AGI. You can see which researchers have been working on AI and AGI, what their PhD students have gone to do. I mean, you can't rule out entirely like some Soviet-era scientists slaving away on some analog computer in a basement in Novosibirsk for 20 years and get a breakthrough, but it's extraordinarily unlikely. Now, if you want to ask whether, like, the global brain of humanity, the coordinated network of computers and people online at this moment, has a form of emergent superintelligence, like it may well, and we may not be able to understand that any better than the neurons in our brain can understand us and what we're doing, right? Because it may be like we have so many computer systems, software and hardware interlinked. We're typing stuff with them all the time, and we don't have conscious control really of why we're doing this or that thing at any point in time. I mean, free will is largely an illusion, right? So I mean, it may be there's an emerging superintelligence, which is the global brain of humanity and all its tools, and this emergent global superintelligence maybe in its own way communicating with what's called Gaia, like the emergent mind of the physical ecosystem, right? So there may be levels of superintelligence that are there that are actually driving everything we're doing, and we're just
unaware.
Yeah, we're too narrow to think about it. Just like our neurons and our skin cells, they're not thinking about the fact that I'm going to the store to buy some groceries or something. Even though those groceries will feed these cells. But if you're talking about a super intelligence that is better than us at doing the specific kinds of things that we like to do and think of as intelligent, like building a machine or writing a computer program or something. I mean, I don't think I don't think we're there yet. You could argue we're already in the technological singularity from a historical zoomed out point of view. Because I mean, if suppose we're 5 years to creating a real thinking machine, right? I mean, then I mean, in hindsight, the gap between like GPT-4 and the human level thinking machine, if it's a 5 year gap,
It's
that
2029, I think you've mentioned before.
yeah, that's what Ray Kurzweil has posited in his book, The Singularity is Near, based on sort of charting like what when will the single server have the same power as a human brain, right? So I mean, yeah, certainly on a historical time frame, it's quite possible we're so close that we're essentially there. And I mean, looking in hindsight, it's gonna look like we're there. Because I mean, like if you look at prior historical transitions, like the move from, say, hunting and gathering to agriculture or something. I mean, that wasn't all at once. Hunter gatherers just Yeah, I mean, hunter gatherers did agriculture, then they dropped doing it, and they started again, then they dropped doing it, and in that case, there were thousands of years over which that transition took place, and still not completely. There's still hunter gatherers in Africa and the Amazonas and so forth. So, I mean, if you're partway through that transition, I mean, it will look different in hindsight than it does in foresight. So, I do think we're plausibly really, really close to that transition, which is wild if you wrap your brain around it. Like, okay, do we need to put money in that pension fund? If I have a 2-year-old kid, do I need to save money for them to go to college? Will college exist by the time they turn 17, right? Like
Do
that.
you think it's quantum? That's that next revolutionary step. I mean, obviously, the industrial revolution was way shorter than the agriculture, and it's kind of like it's a parabolic curve, right?
I think we will get to human level AGI without quantum computing. I don't think we need quantum computing for it. On the other hand, quantum computing will be an amazing revolution, and I mean, there's no doubt that will amp up AI systems and blockchain networks and a lot of other things tremendously. I don't currently see why you need that to get to human level AGI. I mean, I think the human brain may have some quantum effects in it. That's not what mainstream neuroscience says, but mainstream neuroscience doesn't know everything. On the other hand, it's pretty clear the human brain is not doing like full on strongly quantum coherent quantum computing like you can do in a photonic quantum computing system or something. So like you clearly don't need that to emulate what the human brain is doing, at least unless all of our neuroscience is terribly wrong. So I think we can get to human level AGI without that. But I mean, it's going to be amazing, right? And of course, quantum mechanics is something human beings are bad at thinking about, right? I mean, I'm pretty good at thinking about it for a human, but it's still, I got to crunch through the math to do quantum mechanics. I don't have a perfect intuition for how this stuff will work. And you can take an AGI, you can give it sensors and actuators at the quantum scale, and it's going to be able to gain an intuition for quantum mechanics, which will surely let the AGI make humongous advances in quantum computing. So I think you'll see an amazing sort of virtuous cycle there. Like you plug the QPU into your AGI system, to carry out certain functions. That will make the AGI system much smarter. It will then design a better quantum processing unit to upgrade it even further, and that's going to be amazing. My bet is that helps you get from human level AGI to super intelligence, and I don't think you need to get to human level AGI.
Yeah, and I think that leads perfectly into singularity and what you're developing with blockchain. So, because obviously the advancements like from what we have now, from Bitcoin to even Ethereum, and allowing you to actually build protocols, et cetera, and have access to smart contracts with that quantum, like what's that leap look like in terms of data storage and efficiency? Like everything just evolved with the on-chain system. Why did you choose to build on top of ERC at the time? Because singularity is obviously a part.
Because it was there.
Just because it was there? There was no reason to build your own. I don't necessarily know what's your history of coming into the crypto market and choosing it to focus.
Yeah, so I mean, in 2000, 2001, I started thinking about how would you use a combination of strong encryption and distributed computing to make a decentralized AI network with no centralized owner or controller. And I came to the conclusion with the technology at that time, it would just be really, really slow. And if I thought I was just thinking about decentralized AI, if I thought about decentralized money, then I would have become Satoshi, and we probably have the singularity by now, right? But
and you said you're working with the government. There's rumors that the government. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. No, So then it was clearly not when Bitcoin came out. I thought it was cool, but it seemed like pinned to this proof of stake, which has generated so much heat and wasted so much energy. It kind of pissed me off in that way. Like we had these Bitcoin mining boxes in an AI lab. I was working in Hong Kong, and literally the room was always hot because these mining boxes were always running. Hong Kong is hot enough anyway, right? So, I mean, it seemed brilliant in some ways, also seemed stupid prototype level technology in some ways. And because of the way it was decentralized, there wasn't a clear upgrade path, right? I mean, in theory, yeah, you can fork, but that gives all sorts of financial issues. And I mean, there were people I knew who were working on the way to make Bitcoin way more efficient, who were literally assassinated by Russian mafia people, right? I mean, there's a lot of politics about Bitcoin because people are making so much money off mining. Right? So when Ethereum came out, I mean, I always hated Solidity as a programming language. It's a terrible, terrible language as a developer. But what I could see is, I mean, you have smart contracts, which means you can start to develop decentralized AI without going in and refactoring the plumbing. Like you could develop decentralized AI on Bitcoin, and we see that with BitVM now, right? People are now saying, well, we've made Bitcoin with inscriptions into a universal Turing machine. So you could actually do all that on Bitcoin, and we saw that back then. You had Bitcoin colors and so forth, but it was clearly a lot of painful code gymnastics to make decentralized AI work on Bitcoin, even though it was possible.
Expensive, slow. Yeah, it was. That makes sense.
Yeah, and the upgrade path was not clear. So with Ethereum, it was also expensive and slow, but less so. And there was a nice scripting language, ugly, but it worked. You could do it, but it was also clear, due to the nature of the Ethereum community, like there was a will and a path to make it better and better year on year, which has happened, right? So it seemed that was the first software framework that seemed like, okay, it's actually worth dusting off these old ideas from the turn of the millennium and like see can we actually build a decentralized AI network on top of this. And there wasn't anything else better at that time to work with. I mean, I looked a bit at NEM, which is an alternative blockchain, which was also perfectly good, but they didn't have symbolics here. They didn't have a smart contract language. You'd have to roll your own. I did think about building my own layer one, but it's a lot of work. And, trying to build AGI and building the middleware layer between AI and blockchain already seems like enough to do, right? So at that point, building on Ethereum was a tactical thing to do. I then got enamored of Cardano when that matured a bit, because that clearly, you got to use Haskell as a smart contract language, which is a much better language than Solidity, just from a software development view. It's a pure functional language. You can do full verification to prove that your programs do what they're supposed to do. It's nicely architected, and we're partway through a process of porting SNet to Cardano. Some of it's ported, some of it isn't, and that's been fun. But so last year I finally bit the bullet and started co-developing my own layer one, which is Hypercycle, or as Tufi Saleba, who's leading that project, calls it, it's layer 0++. So you could use Hypercycle just as a low-level protocol, sort of like an encrypted TCP/IP, right? Or you could use it as a layer one network, but you could also use it as a side chain to Cardano or
So the book
Theory,
is a lot more interoperability access.
Yeah, or you could use it as what I'd call a layer 3, like a knowledge and reasoning layer that could be put on top of existing layer 2s. Right? So, and what made me plunge into that was discovering the Toda technology developed by Tufi Saliba and Dan Tolliver, where they solve some fundamental algorithmic problems that lets you do a blockchain without a ledger. And I'm just like, well, that's okay. This is cool, right? Like this, you're getting rid of the ledger. It's sort of like each participant in the network contains Merkle trees recording their own history, and then encrypted versions of the histories of their neighbors. But it's like sharded all the way down from the beginning by design. So I'm like, well, okay, this is a new thing. Indeed, the ledger sucks. Like having to write everything to this ledger will slow you down intrinsically, right? No matter how much you speed up the plumbing. So once I understood what they had in terms of a ledgerless infrastructure for blockchain, then I saw, well, okay, we don't anymore need to just run AI as a totally separate layer on top of a blockchain. Instead, we could make more of the AI's thought processes on chain, because when you get rid of the ledger, you can make things fundamentally more, way more efficient than you could possibly do with a ledger-based technology. And so that led to that Hypercycle project. So yeah, in the various parts of the tech stack I'm working on now with my whole team in Singular ecosystem, and we have something called OpenCog Hyperon, which is an attempt to actually build an AGI mind, and it's only one among many possible attempts. It's the one I'm thinking will work, but it uses neural nets together with logical reasoning and evolutionary learning. So it's not a pure deep neural net. It's a hybrid sort of neural symbolic evolutionary approach. But anyway, this is an attempt at AGI. Then Singularity Net is sort of a middleware layer, which lets you have multiple agents running different parts of your AI system on different computers owned and controlled by different people. So it lets you take something like OpenCog Hyperon or deep neural nets or whatever, and lets you take AI systems and run them without needing AWS or Azure or something. Run them in a decentralized way.
I was going to ask, this Singularity doesn't rely on an AWS or centralized database. It's completely, because you're pulling decentralized oracles out of it.
I mean, you could put a Singularity node on AWS. I mean, we have some, but I mean, we also have some running on the Hyper AI Box, which is a piece of custom hardware made by Hypercycle. I mean, we have some running on this decentralized hardware here in our little office, right? So I mean, it's not that you can't put on big tech infrastructure, but you don't have to, right? So then Singularity Net is sort of a middleware layer between blockchains and AI systems, and then you need some blockchain underneath it. And we're working with Ethereum, Cardano, and now our new custom Hypercycle system. And I mean, I think Hypercycle has advantages in that you can scale down the use of blockchain within your AI more fully. So like within a single learning or thought process, you can use blockchain and encryption there, and it's reasonably efficient. But that doesn't mean everything has to go on hypercycle. Certainly, if your AI is interoperating with other systems and they're on Cardano or Ethereum or whatever other blockchain, I mean, then Singularity Net platform will continue to support these. And I mean, we're talking to a bunch of other blockchains about putting pieces of the Singularity Net network on other blockchains as well. I mean, I think cross-chain certainly is the future. On the other hand, I think there's a unique role for a ledgerless approach to sort of allow you to radically improve the efficiency of on-chain AI.
Yeah, so essentially, Singularity is the decentralized data place or data marketplace for artificial intelligence.
It's data and processing. It's not just data. It's data and processing, yeah, which is important because you need. I mean, AI is not just static data. And AI is like a live processing, learning, reasoning thing, and you need that live dynamic thinking to be running on a decentralized infrastructure, which is harder than just decentralizing data storage or decentralizing like storing value. You have to decentralize something that's doing stuff all the time in a bunch of computers all over the place.
And that's where the token integrates for lineage, provenance, governance, the whole nine.
Yeah, I mean, governance is about the same problem, whether you're decentralizing money processing or storage or whatever, and is in some measure and partly unsolved problem in all of these domains, which we're doing a big initiative in Singularity Net ecosystem on that. And like in the next 2 to 3 years, we really need to improve the flexibility and speed of decision making of our decentralized governance protocols. Because I think we have a decent chance of making the breakthrough to human level AGI with OpenCog running on Singularity Net, running on Hypercycle, right? But if we do make that breakthrough to human level AGI in our ecosystem, then, you know, imagine something, the next big breakthrough beyond GPT, rolled out, running that decentralized network. You know, the world's governments and corporations and so on will start paying a rather large amount of attention to what we're doing, and it will just be better from a lot of perspectives if this is fully decentralized in every possible.
And do you see that path for that, or are you worried?
Yeah, I think
intervention steps in and goes, "Hey, you can't have this country upload AGI." You know,
it's hard. It's hard to do, right? Like, I mean, it will be hard to get Iran off the internet. I mean, it's and it hasn't been done, although we have financial sanctions there. But I mean, it's money is an easier thing to control, right? Because in the end, right now, most people to spend their money want to go through a bank or an ATM or some heavily government regulated thing. So, I mean, you see, like, music downloading is not as easy to control, and you can still get songs off BitTorrent if you want to, right? I mean, that's because you don't need a centralized thing like a bank or an ATM there. It's just computer to computer. So, I mean, I think controlling decentralized AI, if it's really running like BitTorrent, just all over a bunch of decentralized machines, controlling decentralized AI would require at least like a China level great firewall type of control, right? And I'm not sure there's appetite for that among the citizens of Western democracies, right? So I mean, they're probably, especially if these AI networks are providing services that everyone uses and likes and wants, right? I mean, it's then it becomes like, you know, I remember the governments of Dubai and Ethiopia tried to outlaw video chat by Skype and WhatsApp and so forth, and to get you to use some barely functional state-run video chat app instead. But I mean, in the end, nobody wanted to use it, and you can still use the standard ones, right?
Yeah, I think Hong Kong had like WeChat too, right? Like they use they have their
Mainland China. So mainland China, everyone uses WeChat, and that has worked. Hong Kong, everyone uses WhatsApp. WeChat is not common, and I mean, when they transition Hong Kong onto WeChat, then China has fully taken over Hong Kong. But I guess my point is, once you have a decentralized AI network that's running on SingularityNet hypercycle and whatnot, really the only ways to control it are to go like fully China-style fascism, right? And even then it's hard. There's people using VPNs all over China, but they're making a decent go at it. But you can't control it that simply, because that requires you to stop people using Tor, right? I mean, it would really require locking down the internet, and to do that rapidly would be a very big thing for U.S. government, right? This is like imposed martial law aimed at locking down the internet type of thing, and that I'm not ruling that out. And on the other hand, if you have an AI that's decentralized and doing good things that people like, right? I mean, then is there really, in the end, the motivation to put like a martial law to lock down the internet, right? I mean, I think if you have a combination of an AI doing helpful, beneficial things and providing services people want, with like a decentralized global deployment, I mean, it feels like maybe then decentralized networks actually win, because it's what people want, right? I mean, that's like, I mean, the government would have a hard time shutting down the internet. People will revolt, and then I mean, you could send RoboCops into the street to shoot people for going online, but I mean, I don't know if we're really going to go there.
Yeah, so like if a 3-letter agency came up to you, Ben Gertzel, and was like, you need to take this down now, or we're going to imprison you, there's no way to take that off Singularity from a decentralized perspective, because it's distributed computedly across.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be so that neither me nor, I mean, I don't have that power right now, actually. I mean, SingularityNet is a protocol. Some guy in Iran can have a node talking to some guy in North Korea using that protocol, just like they can swap Bitcoin with each other, right? But I mean, I could record a video message saying, please stop using SingularityNet, and no, nobody is holding a gun to my mom's head forcing me to say this, right? But I mean, but we need it to get more and more decentralized. I mean, right now, there is a fairly small group of people who are engaged actively with upgrading and modifying the code. On the other hand, I mean, the code is open, it's out there, it's living all over the place. So I mean, if all of us were to disappear, someone else could take it. So I mean, I think just the fact of this decentralization guides what governments and companies do, and will inhibit them from taking certain directions, right? Because if you had a breakthrough to AGI made by a startup company where there's only 20 people who know about the code, and it's owned by these people together with some VCs, it's a lot more plausible to just buy those people out and like force them to stop doing what they're doing. If the thing is scattered all over the globe with a participatory governance system, then it's possible to shut that down, probably, but it's so much trouble that the world ends up thinking of other directions. Just like, I mean, no one is locking up Linus Torvalds because North Korea and Iran run on Linux, right? I mean, they could go hold a gun to his head and say, well, Linus, like, put something in the kernel that makes it stop working if they're from an Iran IP address, and then someone in Iran has to fork it. So it's not actually the way things have gone. Like, it's just too much trouble, and people follow other avenues.
Ben, pleasure having you on as always. And
Thanks a lot
for giving us the insight. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.